look, like they drive a cab. This is me, Corbin Dallas. Corbin, you understand?
Few science fiction films have managed to be as visually daring, bizarre, and unforgettable as The Fifth Element. It was bold, colorful, and unapologetically strange. But behind its glowing skies, eccentric characters, and chaotic humor lies a story filled with unexpected twists, lawsuits, creative battles, and secrets that most fans have never heard. What began as one man's teenage dream would grow into a cinematic phenomenon wrapped in mystery and controversy. From hidden comic book inspirations to invented languages and intense casting wars, every detail of this film hides a fascinating truth. In this video, we will uncover 20 weird facts about The Fifth Element that reveal the madness, genius, and imagination behind one of the wildest sci-fi movies ever made. The film was inspired by a secret French comic that wasn't credited. When The Fifth Element hit theaters in 1997, many fans of French science fiction comics immediately noticed something strange. The futuristic cityscapes, flying taxis, and even the film's quirky tone looked suspiciously familiar. Luc Besson, the movie's director, had grown up reading famous French comics like Valérian and Laureline and the Ancal, and their influence was impossible to miss. The similarities sparked accusations that Besson had borrowed more than just inspiration. Artists like Jean-Claude Mézières, who co-created Valérian, actually worked on the film's design, which blurred the line between homage and imitation. Another legendary artist, Jean Giraud, known as Moebius, later claimed that elements of his work were used without credit. Legal action followed, and although the lawsuit was quietly settled, it left a lasting mark on the movie's legacy. What appeared to be pure originality was in truth a creative blend drawn from the vivid imagination of French comic masters. The original concept was written when Luc Besson was only 16. Long before he became a renowned filmmaker, Luc Besson was a quiet teenager obsessed with outer space. At 16, he began sketching characters, writing short stories, and building an entire fictional universe that would later become The Fifth Element. In his notebooks, he imagined distant planets, brave heroes, and a mysterious weapon of love that could save humanity. For him, it was not just science fiction. It was a dream of something better than the world around him. Over the years, he refined those ideas, shaping them into a screenplay that most studios found too strange and expensive. Still, Besson never gave up. He carried that youthful vision through every obstacle until it finally reached the screen decades later. The result was a film that felt both fresh and deeply personal. Every wild costume, every exaggerated character, and every glowing city towered on the foundation of a dream that started in the mind of a teenager. The story of The Fifth Element is, in many ways, the story of believing in imagination when no one else does. Milla Jovovich beat out 8,000 actresses for Leeloo, including Julia Roberts. The search for Leeloo was unlike any other casting process in Hollywood. Luc Besson wanted someone who looked both human and alien, delicate yet powerful, and capable of expressing innocence and strength without words. More than 8,000 actresses auditioned for the role, including some of the biggest names in the 1990s like Julia Roberts and Elizabeth Berkley. None of them captured what Besson had imagined. Then came Milla Jovovich, a young actress and model who spoke several languages and had a strikingly otherworldly presence. Her audition left Besson speechless. She moved with strange grace, laughed unexpectedly, and brought a kind of purity to the character that felt authentic. Although critics at first questioned her inexperience, Milla quickly proved she was born for the role. Her energy, her look, and her effort to master the alien dialogue turned Leeloo into one of the most iconic female characters in sci-fi history. Against all odds, she became the beating heart of the movie. Leeloo's divine language was a real constructed language. When audiences first heard Leeloo speak, they assumed it was random gibberish. But the alien tongue known as the divine language was no nonsense. It was an entirely constructed language with real vocabulary, structure, and rhythm. Luc Besson designed it with the help of Milla Jovovich, who developed pronunciation and grammar rules until it sounded consistent and believable. The language contained about 400 words, and by the end of filming, Milla and Besson could hold actual conversations in it. They would sometimes speak the language on set to confuse others, turning it into a private joke. Jovovich even revealed that Besson occasionally sent her notes, written entirely in the divine language. What began as a small creative detail became one of the film's most fascinating legacies. It added a layer of authenticity to Leeloo's character, and reminded viewers that this was not just science fiction. It was an entire world, complete with its own sound and soul. Few films have gone that far in creating life beyond the script, but The Fifth Element did it with both passion and playfulness. Gary Oldman hated his own role. Gary Oldman's performance as the eccentric villain, Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zorg, is one of the film's strangest highlights. With his mismatched outfit, plastic hairpiece, and bizarre southern accent, Zorg is both menacing and ridiculous. Yet, behind that unforgettable portrayal lies an uncomfortable truth. Gary Oldman later admitted that he did not even like the role. He only accepted it as a favor to Luc Besson, who had previously helped him finance another film project. Oldman confessed in interviews that he found the story confusing and his character meaningless. He could not fully understand the script's logic or motivation, but he threw himself into the performance anyway. Ironically, his exaggerated style became one of the film's most iconic elements. Fans loved Zorg's absurd monologues and over-the-top personality, and his villainous charm became a lasting symbol of the movie's surreal tone. Even though Oldman personally disliked the experience, his performance added the kind of unpredictability that The Fifth Element needed. Sometimes, creative discomfort can lead to artistic brilliance, and Gary Oldman's reluctant participation turned out to be one of the most memorable parts of the entire film. The Diva's opera scene was so difficult, it became an internet legend. One of the most unforgettable moments in The Fifth Element is the performance of Diva Plava Laguna, the blue-skinned alien opera singer. Her aria, which shifts from a classical melody to a futuristic rhythm, became an instant cinematic marvel. What many do not realize is that the song was written to be impossible for a human to perform in real time. Composer Eric Serra deliberately created sequences that jumped across multiple vocal ranges at lightning speed, something no opera singer could do naturally. The final recording was a careful digital blend of human voice and studio manipulation, yet the challenge inspired countless singers to try. Over the years, several professional sopranos attempted to master the impossible piece. Some even trained for years just to perform it live, turning the song into an internet sensation long after the movie's release. The Diva's scene represents the very soul of The Fifth Element, beauty fused with impossibility. It was emotional, surreal, and technologically advanced for its time. In a film filled with wild imagination, this one musical moment captured the heart of everything Luc Besson wanted to say, that art, even when artificial, can still feel deeply alive. Jean-Paul Gaultier designed over 1,000 costumes. The futuristic fashion of The Fifth Element did not just happen by chance. Luc Besson enlisted legendary designer Jean-Paul Gaultier to create every costume seen on screen, from Leeloo's iconic bandage outfit to the police uniforms and background extras. Gaultier approached the project as if he were designing a living art exhibit. He personally supervised the creation of more than 1,000 costumes, each crafted with meticulous attention to detail. Gaultier's imagination gave the film its unique visual identity. He mixed elements of punk, haute couture, and comic book exaggeration to build a world that felt simultaneously absurd and believable. Some designs were so bold that the American Rating Board questioned their appropriateness. Yet Besson refused to censor his vision, insisting that the future should look wild and unpredictable. The result was a movie that looked like no other. The clothing became an extension of the characters, expressing humor, sensuality, and rebellion. Even decades later, fashion critics still reference The Fifth Element as one of the boldest cinematic statements ever made. Jean-Paul Gaultier's contribution transformed the film from ordinary science fiction into a visual masterpiece, proving that costume design can shape an entire universe. The film's hidden anti-consumerism message. Behind its wild visuals and comedic tone, The Fifth Element carries a surprisingly serious social message. Luc Besson's futuristic world is not just filled with aliens and flying cars. It is also filled with advertisements, corporate control, and an overwhelming sense of consumer chaos. The movie's exaggerated setting mirrors a world where everything is sold, packaged and commodified. Even food, entertainment, and love have become part of an endless cycle of consumption. Besson uses humor and absurdity to criticize how modern life often values material success over meaning. The constant presence of product logos, loud media, and mechanical customer service represents the loss of genuine human connection. Corbin Dallas, the film's weary hero, is surrounded by machines and commercial voices. Yet, he lives in isolation. Only Leeloo, the embodiment of purity and love, breaks through the noise and reminds humanity of what truly matters. While the film dazzled audiences with its visuals, its deeper message was often overlooked. It is a satire wrapped in spectacle, warning against a future ruled by greed and distraction. Beneath the chaos, The Fifth Element is really about rediscovering love and identity in a world that has forgotten both. The film nearly bankrupted its studio. The Fifth Element was an ambitious project from the start, but few realized just how risky it was financially. When production began, it was already one of the most expensive European films ever made. The original budget was set around $60 million, but Luc Besson's grand vision soon pushed that number toward $100 million. Every detail, from the intricate costumes to the massive miniature models and advanced visual effects, demanded enormous resources. The studio, Gaumont, placed its entire future on the success of this single film. Many insiders feared that if the movie failed, the company could collapse entirely. When it premiered in the United States, critics were divided, and American box office results were lower than expected. For a brief moment, disaster seemed certain. Then the film found unexpected success overseas, particularly in Europe and Asia, where audiences embraced its unique humor and visual style. Over time, international sales and home video releases turned it into a financial success. What nearly destroyed the studio eventually saved it. The Fifth Element became proof that taking creative risks could pay off. Its triumph helped secure France's place in global cinema and showed that visionary storytelling could survive even the greatest financial gamble. The Fifth Element was originally planned as a trilogy. Luc Besson's dream for The Fifth Element was far larger than a single movie. In the early stages of development, he wrote a story that stretched across 3 complete scripts. His idea was to create an epic trilogy, exploring different corners of the universe he had built. Each film would have expanded on the mysteries of the elements, the ancient priests, and the origins of Leeloo's power. However, budget constraints and studio pressure forced Besson to compress everything into one film. Condensing 3 full stories into a single movie meant cutting entire characters, civilizations, and subplots. Some of the strange transitions and loose threads that fans noticed in the finished version come from this drastic condensation. Despite the compromise, The Fifth Element still managed to feel like an entire universe packed into 2 hours. The idea of a trilogy remains one of the film's great what-ifs. Fans have long speculated about what the sequels might have explored. Besson himself has occasionally hinted that parts of those unused scripts influenced his later film, Valerian, and The City of a Thousand Planets. What was once meant to be a trilogy instead became one extraordinary standalone masterpiece that continues to inspire curiosity decades later. Chris Tucker's Ruby Rhod was based on Prince. One of the most outrageous characters in The Fifth Element is Ruby Rhod, the flamboyant intergalactic show host, who seems to exist in a constant state of excitement. His wild energy, futuristic fashion, and high-pitched voice instantly made him unforgettable. What many fans do not know is that Luc Besson originally wrote the role for the musician Prince. The character's flamboyant outfits and sensual personality were inspired directly by Prince's stage persona and androgynous style. Prince was sent costume sketches and script pages, but declined the role after seeing how exaggerated the designs were. He reportedly told Besson that the wardrobe was a bit too much. The director then turned to Chris Tucker, who gave the character his own unpredictable flair. Tucker drew inspiration from both Prince and Michael Jackson, combining charm, rhythm, and comedic timing into something entirely unique. Though some critics found Ruby Rhod overwhelming, he became one of the film's most talked about figures. His over-the-top performance captured the movie's spirit of excess and humor. Even without Prince, the role maintained his influence. Ruby Rhod remains a tribute to the power of individuality and performance, proving that sometimes the most outrageous characters leave the strongest mark on pop culture. Leeloo's orange hair caused a production delay. Leeloo's fiery orange hair became one of the most recognizable symbols of the fifth element, but achieving that look was far from simple. Milla Jovovich's natural hair was repeatedly dyed to get the perfect shade, and the process turned out to be damaging and time-consuming. After several failed attempts, her hair began to weaken and break, forcing the production team to halt filming for repairs and adjustments. Eventually, the crew settled on using specially designed wigs that replicated the vibrant color without further harming Jovovich's hair. Even then, maintaining the consistency of the shade across scenes was difficult, and the lighting sometimes altered its appearance on camera. Luc Besson was famously particular about details, insisting that the color must reflect Leeloo's fiery spirit and purity. The makeup and hair teams spent countless hours ensuring every strand looked flawless on screen. Though the process caused delays and frustration, the final result was worth it. Leeloo's orange hair became an iconic image of science fiction cinema, symbolizing innocence, strength, and individuality. What seemed like a small aesthetic choice ultimately became one of the film's defining visual features. Luc Besson married Leeloo, then divorced her. Art and reality collided when Luc Besson married Milla Jovovich shortly after The Fifth Element was released. Their professional collaboration had turned into a personal relationship during production, as the two spent months together crafting Leeloo's character and developing the story's emotional core. The marriage seemed like a perfect continuation of the film's romantic message, with the director and his leading lady united both on and off the screen. However, the romance did not last. Within 2 years, the couple separated, and their brief marriage became one of Hollywood's many curious behind-the-scenes stories. For fans, it blurred the line between fiction and reality. The love that saved the universe in the movie could not survive the pressures of fame and creative life. Still, their collaboration produced something timeless. Jovovich's portrayal of Leeloo remains one of her most beloved performances, and Besson's direction helped shape her early career. Their short-lived partnership left a lasting mark on cinema, reminding viewers that the passion behind the camera can be just as intense as what appears on screen. The alien diva's song was thought impossible to sing. The haunting performance of the blue alien diva, Plava Laguna, remains one of the most unforgettable moments in The Fifth Element. Her operatic solo, the Diva Dance, was composed by Eric Serra, who intentionally created a section that no human voice was believed capable of performing live. The song rapidly shifts across octaves and tones in ways that exceed natural vocal range. When recording the track, the composer used a professional soprano for the operatic bass, and then digitally altered parts to create the impossible runs. Yet, decades later, several vocalists have astonished audiences by performing it live, proving that with technique and training, the impossible song is not beyond human reach. The scene itself was filmed under intense pressure. The actress portraying the diva, Maiwen Lebesco, delivered her role while wearing an elaborate latex costume that limited movement and made breathing difficult. Despite the physical challenge, her grace and poise turned the sequence into cinematic poetry. The Diva Dance became a symbol of beauty transcending limitation. Its blend of classical and futuristic music perfectly embodied the movie's theme of harmony between human emotion and advanced technology, leaving audiences breathless long after the final note faded. Prince nearly played Ruby Rhod. One of the strangest behind-the-scenes stories from The Fifth Element is that the eccentric intergalactic show host Ruby Rhod was almost played by none other than Prince. Director Luc Besson wrote the role specifically with the pop icon in mind, inspired by Prince's flamboyant fashion sense, gender-bending style, and theatrical performances. The idea was that Ruby would embody the futuristic fusion of celebrity and chaos, a living performance of glamour and madness. When Besson presented the costume designs to Prince, the reaction was not what he expected. Prince reportedly found the sketches too effeminate, which is ironic given his famously bold fashion. He politely declined the offer, leaving Besson to look for someone equally energetic and unpredictable. The role eventually went to Chris Tucker, who transformed Ruby Rhod into one of the most memorable and outrageous characters in science fiction history. Tucker combined Prince's eccentricity with the rhythm and charisma of Michael Jackson, creating a character who was electric, absurd, and unforgettable. The bizarre mix of hyperactive energy, shrill humor, and futuristic style made Ruby a cultural icon. Even today, many fans can't help but imagine what the movie would have looked like if Prince had said yes. Leeloo's language became a secret code, The divine language spoken by Leeloo in The Fifth Element is one of the film's strangest and most fascinating details. Luc Besson invented it himself, crafting around 400 unique words and grammatical rules. He wanted Leeloo's speech to sound ancient, celestial, and completely different from any known human tongue. What began as a cinematic experiment soon turned into something far more personal. Milla Jovovich, who played Leeloo, became so fluent in the language that she and Besson began using it privately on set. They would exchange notes and letters written entirely in the invented tongue, almost like a secret code shared between them. It was playful, but it also deepened Jovovich's connection to her role. The language's rhythm and sound were based loosely on Slavic roots, mixed with elements of phonetic creativity. Jovovich's performance gave it life, making it feel authentic, even though no viewer could understand it. Fans have since attempted to decode and reconstruct it online, treating it as a real linguistic puzzle. What makes this fact so unusual is how much effort went into something so small. A fictional language that exists for only a few minutes of screen time became one of the most unique pieces of movie lore ever created, building a miniature city of the future. Before digital effects dominated filmmaking, The Fifth Element relied heavily on physical models and practical artistry. One of the most incredible achievements was the creation of a massive miniature version of New York City, complete with flying cars, skyscrapers, and layered roadways. Built at 1/24th scale, the model spanned dozens of city blocks. 80 skilled artists, engineers, and designers worked for nearly 5 months to bring the futuristic metropolis to life. Each building was meticulously detailed, with miniature windows, lights, and billboards that made the city feel alive. Filmmakers used motion-controlled cameras to weave between the buildings, creating the illusion of massive scale. The results were so realistic that audiences assumed it was all computer-generated, though CGI played only a limited supporting role. The process was exhausting and expensive, but it produced visuals that still hold up decades later. Luc Besson's decision to favor tangible craftsmanship over digital shortcuts gave the film a depth and realism rarely seen in modern sci-fi. That intricate miniature city is now considered a lost art form, a relic of filmmaking's golden age of practical effects. What viewers saw on screen was not pixels, but the result of thousands of human hours spent hand-building the future from scratch. Gary Oldman hated the movie he starred in. Gary Oldman's portrayal of Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zorg remains one of cinema's most eccentric villains, but the actor himself has admitted that he never cared for the movie at all. In interviews, Oldman revealed that he accepted the role only as a favor to Luc Besson, who had helped him finance another project. "I owed him one," Oldman said bluntly. "That's the only reason I did it." Despite his indifference, Oldman threw himself into the part, delivering a performance that was both ridiculous and menacing. His exaggerated accent, chaotic energy, and wild wardrobe turned Zorg into a darkly comic caricature of corporate greed. The character's over-the-top style became a defining symbol of the film's strange humor. Years later, Oldman admitted that he can't stand The Fifth Element. He found it loud, confusing, and not at all aligned with his personal taste. Ironically, fans adore his performance, often ranking Zorg among the greatest sci-fi villains of all time. This contradiction makes Oldman's involvement even more fascinating. An actor who disliked the project ended up delivering one of its most iconic and unforgettable performances. It is a reminder that sometimes, even reluctant roles can create cinematic magic that lasts far beyond the actor's own appreciation. The crew that walked out on Luc Besson. Behind the dazzling visuals and futuristic flair of The Fifth Element lies a story of near mutiny. Luc Besson, known for his meticulous control and creative intensity, pushed his crew to the brink during production at Pinewood Studios. The French director's style clashed heavily with the largely British effects, and set teams who found his communication abrupt and his demands relentless. Tensions grew until they finally erupted. A large portion of the crew reportedly walked off the set mid-production, forcing emergency replacements. Model maker Nick Alder, who worked on the project, later recalled that the atmosphere was volatile, describing days when creative arguments nearly derailed filming altogether. The Pinewood team felt Besson's vision was unreasonably ambitious, while Besson viewed their approach as too traditional for his avant-garde ideas. The chaos behind the camera echoed the film's on-screen energy, frantic, unpredictable, and larger than life. It is said that the walkout only fueled Besson's determination to finish his cinematic dream his way. Ironically, what nearly destroyed the film's production became part of its legend. The Fifth Element survived its internal meltdown and emerged as one of the most stylistically distinct sci-fi films ever made, forged in real creative conflict. The Search for Leeloo, 8,000 auditions and 1 star. Luc Besson's vision for the Fifth Element hinged on finding the perfect embodiment of purity and power, the supreme being. Casting Leeloo was not a typical Hollywood search. It became a global obsession. The production team auditioned over 8,000 women across continents. Models, actresses, and even unknown newcomers all tried to capture what Besson called a spark of something not human, but divine. No one fit. Then came Milla Jovovich, a 21-year-old Ukrainian-born model and rising actress. Her ethereal look and piercing presence stopped Besson cold. He later said she had an energy that felt from another planet. Once cast, Jovovich committed completely. She mastered the fictional divine language, trained in martial arts, and developed Leeloo's movements as a blend of innocence and lethal grace. Her unique orange hair and emotional expressiveness became instant icons. Studio executives were uncertain about the choice, but audiences would later agree Besson had been right. Jovovich's portrayal transformed Leeloo from a strange alien into a symbol of love's power in a chaotic universe. Her casting wasn't luck. It was destiny, the result of a worldwide search for one face capable of carrying both humanity and divinity in a single gaze. The Fifth Element remains one of the most daring and imaginative sci-fi films ever made. Beneath its dazzling colors and outrageous characters lies a vision of humanity at war with its own indifference, searching for meaning in a world overflowing with noise. Luc Besson's masterpiece fused art, comedy, fashion, and philosophy into a single pulse of creative energy that still inspires filmmakers and dreamers today. From the impossible music of the Blue Diva to the chaotic brilliance of Ruby Rhod, every detail speaks of a future both strange and familiar. Decades later, it continues to remind us that even in a fractured universe, love, courage, and individuality remain the ultimate elements that hold everything together.